Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books. Today we're talking about DC Comics. They will not be licensed out by Warner Bros. Discovery. They will be publishing their own DC Comics. David Zaslav has not made an official announcement about this. However, there's been a lot of talk about this. There have been articles about this. There have been conversations about this. It's going around on Twitter. And I'm the guy who does a lot of videos about Warner Bros. Discovery, and I know comics. Warner Bros. Discovery, I've got 32 videos on these guys, okay? And I've been studying David Zaslav since basically for years at this point. And more in depth when I heard the announcement about Discovery merging with Warner Media. And the reason why is it's fascinating. It's interesting. They're really good creative and really strong business people. And the combination of the creative and the business is very, very impressive. So I'm going to just tell you right up front. The reason why it's impossible that Warner Bros. Discovery could say, hey, you know what? We're going to stop publishing our own comics. We're just going to license them out to very creative people, just like we did with the toys. You know, we go ahead, we'll give Todd McFarlane a call. Maybe Rob Liefeld will want to publish some. Maybe IDW. Sure, we'll just do it. No. They can't do that. It's impossible for them to do that. Why? Well, first of all, they just merged the company, didn't they? They just merged Warner Brothers and Discovery. And they have to appear to be competent, even if they're not competent, which I think they are. But they need to at least look like they knew what they were doing, right? You can't have Zaslav making public announcements saying, you know what? I'm looking for the next Kevin Feige. I want someone to invest 10 years of their life who's an accomplished producer, who is clearly capable, if this person even humanly exists. I think they'd be better off doing it with at least a team of 3 people, but that's just me. You know, I'm going to go and I'm going to recreate the Marvel success early on before Marvel went woke. I'm going to have a top producer. We're going to do 10 years worth of films. It's going to be a huge business for us. Obviously, it's going to drive film, TV, merchandising, licensing, their whole direct-to-consumer subscription business. Internationally, they're going to have this incredible thing that they're doing, but they're just not competent to produce comic books. Now, mind you, they haven't actually done this. They haven't actually been able yet to find someone who would be their Kevin Feige. They hardly have anyone saying that they'd want to do it. Apparently, The Rock wants to do it. So they can't say that they're not competent to be able to produce the comics. And no one's expecting the comics to be huge money makers. But they are expecting that at the very least that DC Comics can actually make comics. Because even though a lot of us who are fans of comics are disappointed in Marvel and they're woke and they're not good, and even before all of this, I've been bothered about Marvel Comics for a long time because they gave up their house style, they gave up their continuity, they gave up their coherent storytelling. They have a very different aesthetic from book to book. It's a mess. However, that was before all the woke problems. But there is no general perception among investors, among film producers, film talent, banks that are lending money to Disney. There's no perception that there's anything, quote, wrong with Marvel Comics, right? There's no impression that the comics business is being badly managed. There's some conversation publicly about the film and TV stuff, but at least they can make the comics. So if Zaslav is going to say, listen, we can get the job done. We can create, what could be a $10 or $20 billion business, driving tremendous growth in all their other areas of business. Again, especially the direct-to-consumer that they're so hot on. If they can't do it in comics, of course they can't do it in film and TV. They lose credibility. So they're not going to just go ahead and say, you know what, we give up. We're not able to do this. It would be nice if we could, but maybe we can find some image guys and they'll publish comics for us. And speaking of image guys, Todd McFarlane is amazing. He's a tremendous success. He's been inspirational to me as a creator and a publisher, but also to just about everyone who's a creator and a publisher. he self-published Spawn back in 1992, I believe it was. Just one of the biggest hits in independent comics ever. One of the most iconic comic book characters now anywhere ever. And the longest running independent comic series. He's incredible. However, yes, he's doing a 48, I don't know how many pages this is, 48-page graphic novel, whatever it is, Batman Spawn, but it's a one-shot. He announced they've been working on this since like 2006 or something like that. So they have one Batman Spawn book being published by DC, so it's not even being published by McFarlane. McFarlane's lending Spawn to the project. Maybe McFarlane will do a Spawn Batman, like they did, back in 1994, and where they shared each other's characters. It's possible, but it's just one book. It's just one book. It's not a line of comic books. Okay, so there's nothing that is dependent. The Batman franchise is in no way dependent on whatever McFarlane does with this book. Absolutely not at all. So, yeah, you can have a one-off like this, but that's not a business model, right? That's not what they're going to do with the comics. What they should do with the comics probably is stop all of the periodicals, stop the monthlies, and do collected graphic novels right away. Because you can make an event out of a graphic novel. You can promote a graphic novel. You also have more likelihood of being able to sub-license to foreign languages and recoup the costs of production. But as far as them licensing comics out to other companies, they can sometimes, if they want to play a game and have Batman appear with the Ninja Turtles somewhere, like, that's insignificant. Okay, it's very different than them saying, we're going to completely shut down our comics publishing operation and graphic novels publishing operation because we're not capable of publishing. That's the only way it would come off to the investment community and the fan community. They can't do that. This article from CBR.com is pretty well done. They just touch on the idea. They're not saying it's going to happen one way or the other. They're just talking about the idea of it. But, to me, I don't see how it possibly happens. DC Comics potentially licensing its characters is revolutionary for comics. DC's properties may be getting licensed out more in adaptions, and this trend could revolutionize the trajectory of comic books as well. Certainly could. DC Comics is one of many properties owned by Warner Media. The potential of the characters of the DC Universe exists across movies, TV shows, cartoons, video games, merchandise, and of course comic books. They're everywhere. In the case many of the former, it's possible David Zaslav would begin licensing out DC's lineup. Such actions may soon be reflected in the comics. Well, that's not likely. And what he's making a reference to is HBO Max dropping Bruce Timm's new Batman show. Also a CBR.com article. HBO Max drops Bruce Timm's Batman Caped Crusader from the streaming platform, leaving the animated series to be shopped elsewhere. So why would they do something like this? They own Batman. Why would they just not do an animated series on HBO Max with Batman? It seems perfect. Well, because strategically, they don't want to focus on animation for HBO Max. It costs them millions and millions of dollars to make these things. So Jason Kylar, basically this is something they covered in their last second quarter conference call. Basically, they're as nice as they could be about it, but Jason Kylar was just spending money like a drunken sailor on projects that had no possible opportunity to recoup their expenses. Now, Jason Kylar is a visionary. He started Hulu, brilliant guy, but in terms of dollars and cents, nope, didn't have it. That's why he's not there anymore. That, and he realized he's never going to be CEO of Warner Media under Zaslav's team. They have different ideas. Maybe Hulu would work differently, but in this case, no go. So they canceled Batman Caped Crusader for HBO Max, but it's going to continue to be shopped to other streaming services like Apple, Hulu, Netflix. Whoever will write the biggest check, that's the person that's going to get it. So it's not going to be HBO Max, at least not initially. It depends on the deal that they make. Maybe they'll, after 5 years or something, the shows will go on to HBO Max. And why would Apple do that? Why would maybe Amazon's Prime write a check for that? Because Batman's a big franchise. So for them, it's a reason that they're going to get more subscribers. They will get more subscribers because they have Batman. HBO Max is not focused that way on content that way. They're not interested in more subscribers based on an animated Batman show. So what works for one channel doesn't necessarily work for all the others. And it also depends on how much money they have allocated and what they want their consumers to be focusing on, so that when consumers go to the streaming service, that they're getting what they expect to get, and that's good delivery on the brand. But it also, Zaslav doesn't want his subscribers for HBO Max becoming used to expensive content every time that they go and they get what they want. He doesn't want to have to keep feeding that. So for him, he doesn't need to be doing that. Also canceled was the Constantine TV series that J.J. Abrams was developing with a BIPOC lead or whatever, bi person of color, whatever that was going to be. And that was canceled. So that one supposedly could be shopped elsewhere, but it's not going to get done anywhere. Constantine 2 is coming out with Keanu Reeves. That's going to be the focus. But you will see this Cape Crusader series of Bat. This will show up. It's going to be a great series, Timmy. Definitely worth checking out. Okay, licensing out DC's heroes for use in other publishers' works opens the door wide to get even more readers flooding into DC Comics. I'm not too sure about that. It's already being explored via an upcoming crossover with Todd McFarlane's Pride and Joy Spawn, and it could even see DC crossing over with Marvel Comics once again. So this is the Batman Spawn crossover. It's going to be a huge seller. Todd McFarlane is 1 in a million. He's not in a position to be putting out a graphic novel a week like this, but even if Todd McFarlane, with his creative team, was putting out a graphic novel a week, and it would probably sell a hell of a lot of copies. Todd McFarlane's Spawn Universe #1 sold 497,000 copies recently. That's an incredible number. Specialty covers and whatever, too, to help sell, but what's the difference? They sold the units. But, one graphic novel a month, one graphic novel even a week, that's not enough for DC Comics for what they need to do as DC. That would also look like a failure to them. So it's not going to happen with Todd McFarlane. It's not going to happen with many other independent publishers. It's going to be DC Comics. I would like to see them drop the periodicals and focus on producing graphic novels. They can be 48 pages, they could be 100 pages, they could be 150 pages. Make them 200 pages if you want. But it's much easier to market those as an event and make money from those and put them into multiple distribution channels. And they have a longer shelf life and easier on foreign licensing rights to be able to recoup the cost of production. So there's a lot of good reasons to do it another way. By the way, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel and click the bell for notifications and give me a thumbs up when you like it. You guys have been amazing with that, and thank you so much for helping to build the channel. Licensing out DC's heroes. Well, we're not going to be doing... they're not going to be doing that. So David Zaslav is letting others work on DC-related content. So we just covered this. This is Constantine and the Cape Crusader, which will be coming out, just not through HBO Max. The idea seems to be trickling down to comic books as well, with Image Comics founder working on Batman Spawn, which we also already covered, and Mark Silvestri, another Image founder, is going to be working on a Batman title, but obviously he's doing it for DC through their Black Label imprint. So creators are going to all be excited to work on Batman. That's been happening forever. We all grew up loving Batman, being excited by Batman, and top comic creators, people are just attracted to him. But that doesn't mean they're going to license him out to other creators. So, yeah, there have been wacky crossovers in the past with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and with the Power Rangers. You could do a crossover. It's neither here nor there. But that's not a business strategy for DC Comics. They are not going to be licensing out their comics and canceling their in-house work. Look at this article. I like Cosmic Book News a lot. This was a rumor that was going around before Warner Media was announced to merge with Discovery, and right after Dan DiDio was fired. This goes back to February 2020. Marvel rumored to take over DC Comics. I don't know if you had heard this one at the time. A big rumor has hit the net that in the wake of AT&T firing Dan DiDio, who seems like a nice guy, that Marvel and Kevin Feige may take over DC Comics. Thank God they did not do that. It's claimed that AT&T wasn't happy at all with Dan DiDio's latest attempt at rebooting DC Comics with the upcoming 5G event, aka the 5th generation reboot of DC, which would have seen classic characters replaced with a contemporary take on the characters. Wow, that would have been bad. It's said that Dan DiDio butted heads with Batman writer Scott Snyder over the 5G reboot, as Snyder didn't want his comics involved with the event, which caused problems at DC. So Friday saw Dan DiDio called into the AT&T Warner Brothers offices, where he was fired and let go from DC Comics, which saw DiDio exit the grounds immediately. That's too bad. It's claimed that AT&T doesn't want to do the 5G reboot. Okay, so this never happened, obviously. Now, was AT&T ever considering licensing their comics to Marvel? Word is they were. I'm sure that everything gets talked about. I mean, DC was talking about licensing their doing more than talking about licensing their comics with Jim Shooter at Marvel Comics back in, 1982. The only reason that didn't happen was because of a lawsuit by an independent comics publisher, actually. So it's talked about. Of course, they're talking about it. No doubt they're talking about it. But right now, especially, the opportunity that Warner Brothers Discovery has to recreate what Kevin Feige started but has now lost for Marvel, and to be able to develop that as a cinematic universe and create a multi-billion-dollar money-making engine, it's incredible. So at the very least, no, they're not going to stop publishing comics at DC. I don't know if they're going to start publishing well-done comics. I would assume that they will. Again, I go back to the graphic novels. A self-contained graphic novel is a lot easier to manage editorially, like so that you know what you're going to get, that you have reason that something good is going on there. I really hope they consider moving to something like that. I wouldn't be surprised, because it just makes so much sense from a production standpoint and from a profitability standpoint. Also, keep in mind, too, they need these new comics to come out. It is an IP farm. They do get ideas for characters. You've heard of Harley Quinn before. She's not brand new, but relatively new compared to the age of like Batman. They do get new stories and get new characters out, but it also drives the backlist. They have a good-sized digital business for DC's digital division, whatever the heck it is, the little digital entity. I don't think it's going to be any gigantic moneymaker for them, but every time they make new comics, it drives the digital content and all the backlist sales as well. So they can't stay relevant with their intellectual properties and not publish their own comics. And they can't just license a few here and license a few there. It just doesn't make sense. And publishing hasn't been, comics publishing, for the attention and time that it takes, hasn't really been worth it for big companies to pay attention to. Unfortunately, in the 1990s, when it started to become obvious that, hey, these things are more valuable as intellectual property than they are as comics, there was much less of a focus on actually publishing comic books as a business. So everything has been so messy with the editorial. And what I mean by that is just lack of standards. Even if they're... Standards is one thing to say about quality, but I'm talking about lack of standards where people know what the identity is of the comic book company. The aesthetics of what the comics are supposed to look like when you buy a Marvel brand or a DC brand comic, the coloring, the look, the feel of it, the storytelling should be consistent. So unless they're going to get really serious about developing a publishing business that no longer exists at DC Comics, I go back to my graphic novel plan. Let me know what you think of that in the comments below. I'd love to see what you guys have to say about it. Be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, and I will see you again soon with another video. And if I don't see you, I will miss you.